Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. Mrs. Speaker, sir, we concede to the fact that obesity has led us to a lot of health complications, diabetes, heart diseases, you name it. And we as opposition side totally dislike this perception and condition either. But we think, Mr. Speaker, by putting a fat tax on fast food will totally not benefit the society at all and will bring unnecessary harms. Mr. Speaker, as leader of opposition for today, I'll be doing three things. Firstly, I'll be rebutting the government's case. Secondly, I'll be moving on to the opposition's counter-proposal. And last but not the least, I'll be further on elaborating on our first substantive. As simple as that. Mr. Speaker, we accept the definition which has been brought forth by the government team. However, Mr. Speaker, we do strongly disagree this whole idea of putting fat taxes on food. So here are my rebuttals for the Prime Minister. Now, she pointed out that additional taxes on fatty food would create a disincentive for these people to buy it. Consumers would then turn up to healthy food, Mr. Speaker, because they are non-taxed. But we tell you, Mr. Speaker, even if this fast food are expensive, we tell you that they will still buy it, Mr. Speaker, and have the tendency to move to other options. For an example, if they think that a burger for 5 ringgit is okay for them, they will still buy it no matter what happens, because they are buying it for the sake of eating it, Mr. Speaker. And in cases where poor people who think that a 5 ringgit burger is actually absurd, they'll turn to other things as well, which aren't fast food but still are unhealthy for their health, Mr. Speaker. So it doesn't really curb the problem, which is obesity. It doesn't create a society which thinks twice of buying unhealthy food. Now let's move on to the second issue, which is about the consumption of these fast foods. They pointed out that this agricultural economy will rise up when people turn to healthy food. Mr. Speaker, firstly, you're not even sure that people will follow and turn to healthy food. And have you ever thought about another major component in today's debate, which is about the fast food companies? Why should they be the ones being responsible? Why should they be the ones responsible for the drop in their business when they're already responsible enough at the first place to show the contents of the burger itself? We tell you, by implementing the government's method in today's debate, it will bring unfairness to another party, and it also breaks the social contract, Mr. Speaker, and that is exactly what opposition side doesn't favor, Mr. Speaker. Now, done with my rebuttals, now let's move on to the opposition's counter proposal. We tell you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that our current methods like campaigns are working. How? For example, the Let's Move campaign introduced by Michelle Obama is actually bringing a self-realization into the people of America, Mr. Speaker. And why is this so? Because, Mr. Speaker, Michelle Obama is a very influential person. So people gain their self-realization through influential people. The number of people getting obese, getting fat day by day in America after these campaigns conducted by influential people are dropping by 3% according to statistics, Mr. Speaker. Although this is a small number of change, Mr. Speaker, we tell you that this is a vast amount of improvement. Because, Mr. Speaker, at least the society gets an informed choice whether they want to continue with their bad habits or to turn and to make a change, Mr. Speaker. So the opposition side is proposing, if celebrities like Oprah Winfrey, Avril Lavigne, Miley Cyrus seek to help children to overcome poverty, then why not influencing people to change their bad eating habits? It doesn't require money at the first place, and in fact, they can make a song out of it, Mr. Speaker. And on top of that, Mr. Speaker, we are proposing a second thing which is quite good, Mr. Speaker. Besides working with the media, the opposition feels that it is crucial for us to actually lengthen the physical education periods, physical education classes periods, Mr. Speaker. Because nowadays we see that obesity is striking youngsters, and most of the countries have only 1.5 hour period of a physical education lesson once a week. And in fact, some of the countries, they can either choose if they want this physical education lesson to be included into their school timetable or not. And this is exactly what we don't want. So as a precaution step from the opposition, we want to lengthen the period of the physical education lesson to 2.5 hours, which is also equivalent to exercising on weekdays for 30 minutes, Mrs. Speaker. Why? Because of these students, they tend to ignore the importance of exercising, the importance of workout, and tend to go to video games rather than riding a bike after the school lesson finishes, Mrs. Speaker. Parent control is simply a very subjective matter. Why? Because these are children. They live in different family backgrounds. Some of them don't even have parents to control them, Mrs. Speaker. So we tell you that the number one party that should make a move to help the government to take preventative measures is the school itself, Mrs. Speaker. Now, done with the counter proposal, now let's move on to the first substantive of the opposition, which is about unfairness, Mrs. Speaker. We tell you that day by day, the number of people who are getting fat in the United States are increasing as well. 64.5% of adults are overweight, Mrs. Speaker, and 30.5% of them are obese. Over half of the population eats fast food every day, Mrs. Speaker, and we tell you that the problem is not fast food. It's about the lifestyle that they are practicing, unhealthy eating habit of these people. Because, Mrs. Speaker, if you overeat rice, if you overeat cereals, you will eventually get fat, Mrs. Speaker. And we tell you that the act of putting a fat tax on fast foods is totally unjustified. Why? Because if the government feels that the fast food is the major problem at the first place, then why not increase tax on all foods that are unhealthy? Why not increase the price of chipsters, twisties, because they are unhealthy and cause health complications at the first place too, Mrs. Speaker. And I'm going to tell you about a few scenarios that happens in our society why not only fast food is the major problem. We tell you that it is unjustified for those who are having high metabolism in their body, because, Mrs. Speaker, those who have high metabolism, they consume food and don't get fat, and people see them as healthy people. So if they seem like healthy people, why are they paying more price when they are not getting diseases at all, Mrs. Speaker? That's the first scenario. Now let's move on to the second scenario. What will happen to the society who actually practices a healthy habit? Because there are times, Mrs. Speaker, that the smell of grilled cheese and ground chuck are just irresistible, Mrs. Speaker. So once in a while they tend to buy, and why is it fair for them again to actually pay a lot more higher than they're supposed to pay? No, we tell you that it's not fair. So now let's move on to the third scenario. What will happen to mothers who are busy working day and night, working extra hours to earn more money to sustain a living and have no time to cook for their children? Would it be fair for them? Because they are actually relying on burgers, chips at the first place, because they're more affordable at the first place, rather than buying 6 plates of rice for 6 children, Mrs. Speaker. They already have been working for extra hours to earn more money, and now you're asking them to pay more than they are capable of, Mrs. Speaker. How unfair is the government now, Mrs. Speaker? Now let's move on to the last scenario, the last worst case scenario, Mrs. Speaker. Sorry. How about the students in schools where the cafeteria meals compete with the ones in the vending machine, like candy bars, soda drinks, Mrs. Speaker? We tell you that the fast food is not the only component that leads to obesity, Mrs. Speaker. The reason why students especially, are getting fat nowadays is because the schools itself is not controlling the meals, and the person itself does not have self-realization to know what's the importance of not remaining the healthiness of the body, Mrs. Speaker. So with these 4 scenarios, Mrs. Speaker, we don't favor the unfairness it will create to these people who don't have an informed choice. So by implementing our method, we tell you that it will create fairness to all, make them have an informed choice to whether choose their lifestyles. And we tell you that at least the opposition is showing an improvement with a fairer proposal. If you care about this future generation, if you care about these people who have different family backgrounds, then go with side opposition, Mr. Speaker.